or North America, mostly on the East Coast. And welcome. I am excited to be here today with Cory Janssen, whom I'll introduce in one moment. I haven't really edited this video that opened this show today in, I think, 2 years. So we had amazing people since then. I did this video when I had some free time during COVID, and it shows. But anyways, so today we're going to talk AI, which is
the names are great though, Denny. The quality of the content is great. It's just the video. Yeah,
I did the editing. It's a different story, but when I was young, I used to do that and edit stuff and do trailers of things that never existed, and I thought I was very talented.
There's AI for that now, right?
Yeah, I did it like, with video, do 2 VCRs. I had to play here and then stop and pause and record it on the other one. I did stuff like that. So yeah, so we're talking AI, which is obviously the most important thing that's going on everywhere. I mean, if I'll just say, Alexa, good morning, she will answer me from each and every room. Thank you. So we'll talk about AI in a second. One of my Alexa, stop. Sorry about that. And then I hear about, I'm watching Black Mirror. I don't know if you've seen that TV series. If not, you must, Cory, because it's all about the bad side of AI, where we're going to end up one day with robots, machines that shooting at us. And
I'm doing this because I think AI is going to save humanity, not destroy it, my friend.
That's right. So first of all, guys, just a couple of words about Cory. He's a co-founder of, I think, one of the most famous brands in finance, Investopedia. When I used to be a financial journalist back in the day, and that's where we went when we wanted to check some terms and and check out how it looks like. And obviously, everybody who's in finance and around it knows Investopedia, and I'll talk with him about that as well, because it's an interesting story how he ended up doing that out of, I believe, Calgary, Alberta area, which by the way, as some of you may know, Canada is very strong when it comes to AI. Some of the most famous folks in AI's history are, I believe, one in Calgary, the other one in Montreal, or something like that.
And I'm actually sitting in our Toronto office today. So deep learning was actually invented here at the University of Toronto here in Canada, right? But as with so many things, was the commercialization happened in the US. So we're good from an academic point of view, right? And that's really part of the talent pool we're drawing on. But we'll get into that.
So just a couple really short, Cory is an entrepreneur coming from Alberta. He's a member of the Business Council of Alberta, A100, C100, and YPO. He's been past president of the Edmonton Entrepreneurs Organization. I didn't know there was an Edmonton Entrepreneur Organization. We should talk about that. A director at Vertical Scope, which is traded on the TSX. And McCoy Global also, and he sits on several private company advisory boards. He obviously co-founded Investopedia back in the day, which was later on purchased. We'll talk about that in a second. And today we'll talk about AI and the companies with now that he co-founded as well. AltaML, which I will talk about how they validate AI products through engagements with large enterprise clients, with a unique business model that Cory will present in a second, that provides an early validation advantage and access to valuable data. AltaML has already launched 5 businesses and completed numerous projects, co-led by Cory, who again has a successful track record in founding Investopedia and orchestrating its acquisition by Forbes. The company is dedicated to spinning off billion-dollar companies across various industries. So that's really just a couple of words about Cory. I got to know Cory, just so you guys know. The backstory is that as you know, those of you who follow us, the Canadian market has been brilliant for us. We were very happy to to be there. And today it's our fastest growing market. When I came to Toronto, I was advised to stay out because family offices will not show up, and Canadians are too private, and it's just not going to work. So I immediately said, okay, let's do it. And we've done our first Toronto conference. I brought Easy Sharp, the founder of the Four Seasons, and we did it at the Four Seasons. And ever since then, we've been growing tremendously in Canada. Today, we have annual events in Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, and the largest private developer in Edmonton came to our conference in Vancouver, said, oh, wow, I love it. Let's do it in Calgary. And Tina, and then she helped us, connect the dots, and her and Kim introduced me to Cory. She said, listen, you got to know Cory. The guy from Investopedia is right here. I said, you got to be kidding me. Ever since then, Cory has spoken at several of our conferences in Chicago, in New York, Miami, some of our events here in the US. And I'm very fortunate to know him, to have him on our steering committee at Calgary. So he's the guy that will be putting on a killer AI session in Calgary. And we expect Calgary to be one of our most exciting hubs, because nobody's there to do a real family office conference as it should be. And there's a great wealth, great entrepreneurs, and it's just a great city. So after this long opening, Cory, how are you doing?
Hey, fabulous. Anytime I can talk about AI, it's a good day, which is most days, to be honest.
Yeah, it's everywhere, and it's getting there, and it's all around the place, and search engines and machines that talk to us, and a lot of stuff like that. It actually has some good parts to it, because my wife always tells me what to do, as many people sometimes suffer from. But AI gave me the option to call my lamp in the living room on my wife's name. So that's the only time where I can say, Alexa, turn Linda off. And she needs to say it as well. When my wife tells me, can you change that? I'm telling her, I don't know how to do that. I did it first when I initiated the machine, but I have no idea how to change it now. So don't tell anybody, but that's my thing. So yeah, Cory, so we want you to talk a little bit about what brought you to do what you do now, but maybe just in a couple of words about you, beyond what I've mentioned.
Yeah, so
and how did you end up doing Investopedia? Probably as a young guy in Alberta.
I was still in college. You got to remember, in the late 90s, it was really the getting to the peak of the .com bubble. And so was literally sitting there as a second year business student in finance and saying, hey, we can, we sat down after studying and saying, let's create the biggest, baddest investment website out there. And you got to do a .com, because everyone was doing a .com then, right? And so we would sketch this all out, not on a bar napkin, we had this, but as we got down to work, we realized, okay, well, maybe we can't take on Yahoo Finance in this way, or the street.com in this way, but let's start with this investing dictionary, and then we'll get to all the other fun stuff. What we didn't really realize is that, that timeless content created an amazing business model, because you created the content once, and it was like this annuity that just spun off a ton of cash. And frankly, no one else really focused on education. And so we found that niche in financial education, and sort of rode the discount broker wave up, and had an exit to Forbes in the late 2000s.
And back then there was nothing else. I mean, no other website had, a place where you could check out terms and stuff like that, or.
Well, you kind of forget. I mean, remember, when we started, Google was barely around. Right? We forget how fast things change. And actually, it's a really interesting parallel to now, because I feel like I've seen this movie before in the AI space. We've got all this, we've been doing this for the last 5 or 6 years. And so the hype, it's great. People want to talk about it. Hey, there's attendees on this webinar right now. You hear all the buzz, and so you want to educate and learn a little bit about it. And there will be, a dropping off. There will be a popping to this bubble. But our thesis is, just like in the .com boom, there's this, 2000, everything crashed, but the most transformational companies were built in the following 5 to 10 years. I see that exact same playbook happening right now in the AI space.
And by the way, how did you guys, how many people were doing Investopedia? I mean, you guys had thousands of, tens of thousands of terms, and I don't know, how many people was
We were super lean. We were only about 50 people when we sold. I mean, that was the thing. We just threw up. I mean, it was hey, you know what? It's about cash flow, right? I like businesses that actually throw off cash. So we had a network of hundreds of writers across North America, but we kept it really lean by having, less FTEs and just basically outsourcing the content. So I mean, I think now there's a couple hundred employees, mostly in Manhattan. There's still a handful still in Alberta, where I'm from. But yeah, we were tried to punch way above our weight class, at least from the size. Entrepreneurs like me, I don't like having to make payroll every single month, right? Like, I'd rather keep those expenses down and margins up.
And how did you get the? I mean, how much did you guys had invested to get you guys going until the exit? I mean, you just guys out of college?
Exactly $0 of outside capital. So my father actually signed a line of credit, co-signed. We did up this brilliant business plan, and Danny, I got to tell you, I thought it was amazing. But for some reason, when we went to the bank for this $30,000 line of credit, the bank manager really didn't care about our business plan. He just kind of threw it in the bin and wanted my dad's signature on that line of credit. So that's all. We went down to about 25K into that line, and then after that, never had another dollar of outside money.
So all the 50 employees you had, money was just coming back from what? From commercials and stuff,
ads, subscriptions, investment research and ads, right? So E-Trade, Wall Street Journal was a big client, Charles Schwab. So yeah, I mean, I know it's kind of not in vogue right now to talk about making money the old-fashioned way with cash flow, but yeah. And listen, we talk about not raising capital, but who would have, a lot has changed in venture in the last few years. Who would have given a bunch of money to a couple 20-something-year-olds sitting in Canada trying to educate the US on, financial matters, right? But we transformed the business model by finding experts, hiring CFAs and CFPs from across the states, and built a pretty good little business out of it. That's actually what got me into the AI space, Denny. It's a complete accident. So this whole Gen AI buzz, I was trying to do generative AI 6 or 7 years ago before the term was even invented. So I tried to cookie cutter and replicate the model for Investopedia in this other business. I think like boring kind of industrial businesses like the Safepedia, Corrosion, think the trade publications where there was less competition online. And so I approached these professors at the local university in my town, University of Alberta, which is a top 10 school worldwide for the academic side of AI, and said, hey, I want to do algorithmic content generation. Again, generative AI. So all this buzz around ChatGPT, the technology that actually drives it wasn't invented until 2017. OpenAI didn't really start working on it until 2018, till 2020. So I was 3 or 4 years early and probably a few $100 million off in terms of what that project needed. So you can judge for yourself whether early is just being plain wrong or not. But that project, even though it was a failure, actually inspired us because we saw all this talent coming from around the world to get educated. And in my part of the world, there's not a huge tech ecosystem. So hiring data scientists was like taking candy from a baby. So our first few dozen ML engineers, we couldn't have started this company in Silicon Valley or New York or Toronto or anywhere else, because we were based around that academic. It gave us the ability to actually launch this business, and that's evolved into the venture studio we are today.
And just the timeline, I mean, you guys sold Investopedia when, and then how long do you have, when did you found this company?
It was around 2010. So I had a couple of years where I searched for purpose in my life and realized that I like to build things. So had a few years off and was just managing internal capital. And so we had formally launched in 2018, 2019. So had a few years in there where I was just managing my own book, and then kind of came out of retirement. Well, I guess you could say not retirement. I mean, investing is a full-time job, but decided to get back in the game here when we saw the opportunity. And similar to what I mentioned beforehand, when we talk about the dot-com bubble, the dot-com boom, or really the opportunity in the internet itself, I didn't think in my lifetime I'd get a chance for another technology tailwind like we saw with the internet. And so that was enough to say, hey, you know what? I got one more in me. 43 right now. So I think, listen, I got at least another 10 years of scale up, right?
So when did you, so how old is the current company, AltaML?
So we're about 5 years old right now.
5 years old. So maybe we'll start, by you, explaining what led you to do that and what you guys are all about. And then
Sure.
we can talk
And it's
some
now a
more.
good time for the deck, because we can go through do it in the deck,
Yeah.
and the deck for about 15 minutes, and we'll have lots of time for questions from the audience, and I'll keep the conversation going.
I have some questions for you when you're done. So yeah, take it away.
Okay, well, with that intro, we got the screen up here. Can I get a thumbs up, Danny? We good on the screen?
Yeah, I see the screen. Perfect.
So my vision is to be the world's best investor in early stage applied AI. And so throughout this presentation, I'm going to give a little bit more background in terms of specifically what I mean there. Clearly, no one can be an expert in everything AI, but we think there's a niche that we can truly be the best. And it really is around traditional industries and how they will be able to use data and this new technology to drive change and frankly, build the next generation of tools that unlock human potential. I probably don't need to tell you that AI is the largest opportunity right now in tech. The CAGR on this thing, you say, whether it's between 30 and 45%. We've seen the numbers probably from ChatGPT, the fastest growing consumer product in the history, or in history period. This isn't just a science fiction thought of like the trillions of dollars of value that can be created. Billions of dollars are being invested today in the technology. And we think the opportunity is really in the enterprise. So we've seen increases and numbers here on the screen are between 2018 and 2022. We're seeing growth in terms of enterprise expecting to increase their AI budgets. I actually think some of the recent surveys we've seen, so these numbers are from McKinsey. Right now, even in a bad economy, in a down market, we're actually seeing the AI budgets being perhaps the only thing that's not being cut. But there's a problem. And part of my thesis is contrarian. A lot of venture dollars have gone into basically the assumption that that AI is just a SaaS playbook, just with data. But in our experience, it's been more complicated. Every organization you go into, the data is messy. And then aside, but it's the incumbents that have the data. Most startups don't necessarily have the edge on that, because unless they can figure out a way to acquire as previous slides, the biggest economic impact. And then you've got the domain expertise in enterprise that sometimes is in the startup. Finalizing up here, pretty standard terms on the fund. Again, $25 million fund. The investment period of 3 to 5 years, I think that'll be closer to 3 years than 5. We see so many opportunities. Keeping pretty standard terms as a 2 and 20. I think tried to make a hurdle rate of 8%, relatively LP friendly. And we do have a relatively low minimum contribution, as we are going to family offices and high net worth in addition to institutional investors. And so we do have that low minimum contribution for family offices. So to sum up, we've created a really unique model here with this venture studio, where we believe that we can have an edge in applied AI for vertical applications in the enterprise. If you believe, like I do, that AI is eating all of software, and basically software that isn't used by data, that isn't driven by data and AI won't exist in the next few years, we believe we've got the right vehicle to be able to take on in a diverse way a number of different industries, to be involved at the earliest stages, but in a way that we can actually tilt returns in our favor because of our overall model and our ability to actually de-risk from an early stage. I'll flash on again. That's my personal cell phone number, as well a personal email. Really interested in the discussion, any questions you might have. But if there's interest, happy to send out a copy of this deck and actually for some further data as well for your for further diligence. But as well, feel free to send me a text and I'd be happy to set up a call and talk to you directly. With that, Denny, would love to kind of get into the conversation and any questions from the audience as well as questions that you might have.
Thank you. I was through hell and back while you were doing your presentation. My speaking about technology, my Zoom thing froze. I couldn't hear you. I needed to get back and up again. So yeah, so I continue as if nothing happened, but everything just happened while you were doing your presentation. But luckily, everybody stayed online and it didn't get disconnected. So thank you, Cory, for that. Yeah, so I have some questions that about AI in general, but maybe I'll start first with a question from one of the attendees, which is in the healthcare space, what pre-money valuations are you typically seeing for these startups?
Gunnar, that's a great question. I mean, the market has changed so much over the last 6 months. I would say that early on, when we're making the first investment, because we're involved in the creation, we want to make sure that we're not setting the valuation ourselves, just to be intellectually honest and be as fair as possible. So we'll put in the first money as a safe with a 20% discount. We've usually tried to cap, put on a valuation cap of 10 million. I think that can actually come down right now. So it depends on the market. I still think you've got Silicon Valley and to a lesser extent New York and the rest of the world. But as we go into that seed round, one of the requirements in our fund, in our LPA, is that we can only take up to 75%. So we want to lead, but we have to co-lead. And so in those instances, we're going in and looking for an investor in that space that can allow us to be able to tag on for that term sheet. So I'm not trying to dodge the question as much as saying, like, we try to actually solve this within the fund by partnering. I would say, though, from valuations, it seems like there's some disallocation. And whether you look at the data from PitchBook and the quantitative sources that are out there, it seems like valuations are definitely down 30 to 50%, but many entrepreneurs aren't taking it. So you're almost in a stalemate. We quite kind of see that in terms of valuations, and often it's less about valuations and more about stinky terms in deals. And so we're seeing a lot of term sheets. So because we're not able to actually bridge the gap on valuation, we're seeing big changes in terms of terms and kind of messier term sheets.
Now, I'll talk with you about one of the hottest things that's been going on, right? ChatGPT, that everybody starts to know about. I think I saw somebody, I'm trying to figure out if it's somebody that wrote one of my employees, or was it I read it somewhere that people already start complaining that the email you just wrote is ChatGPT, it's not you, which is interesting. I've been using it a little bit, as an ex-journalist, when you learn how to write what's important and what's secondary and how to, ChatGPT just shows you how you can, by the way, add just words to stuff. I can take something that short and it would make it into something bigger that's basically just words that don't mean anything, but somehow it looks good. What I found out dealing with ChatGPT, that it's really cool, of course, but it takes your personality away, so it doesn't understand. If I'm being cynical, it will not get it. It will ruin the entire idea of what I'm writing and try to make it something more, politically correct or whatever. It doesn't get that part yet, but I guess it's a learning curve. But to ask you in general, how do you see ChatGPT and what it's doing? How should investors think of it? Won't all companies just use ChatGPT? Do you think we'll lose writers and copywriters and all of that? I personally, again, just said that probably not, because you're losing the personal touch that makes something, from just a selling pitch to something a little bit more sophisticated. But maybe maybe it can get there.
Yeah, it's a great question, Denny. So we've been using, ChatGPT is based on, the GPT in ChatGPT is something called a large language model, or an LLM. Just think of these as a special type of machine learning that has lots and lots of variables and lots of the data science call them features. So we're talking trillions. Essentially, they train it on the internet. What a lot of people don't realize is that ChatGPT doesn't know if what it's saying is true or not out of the box. The genius, though, of Microsoft's investment in OpenAI is that they're taking now these large GPT, these large language models, and tying it back in Azure, in their cloud. And what you're going to see is organizations are going to tie that back to their source of truth. So, for example, we actually, one of our spinoff companies in the legal tech space, it's named Jurisage. You recall this lawyer in New York that put in 3 false, he asked ChatGPT for research. So this is even worse than what you're saying, Danny. It's not that it wasn't his voice. It actually put in 3 cases that didn't exist. So with our tech, we've actually acquired one of the largest corpuses of case law. And so by using a large language model, and we actually use GPT, we've tested out GPT as well as some of the other large language models, and tying it back to that source of truth, that knowledge graph, we're able to actually really speed up the legal research process without hallucinating or putting out these garbage responses. So we think that LLMs are going to change everything, but they're just the tip of the iceberg. Most organizations still have tons of use cases that aren't involving generative AI. But if nothing else, this has allowed us to actually have the conversation, and it's opened the door to say, hey, okay, we can really see why something is what's going to happen. I would encourage everybody to think of ChatGPT as like the Netscape moment for AI. I mean, remember this browser Netscape that came out in the mid-90s? Netscape didn't invent the internet, but it was the first time that actually exposed this new communications network and what might be possible. In that same way, ChatGPT is brilliant product engineering, but the back end deep learning, again, was developed right here in Toronto. The front end reinforcement learning, actually the prof who wrote the book on that is in my hometown in Edmonton. It's brilliance in product engineering, but think of it as that starting point where now society has seen what's possible, but it actually creates more opportunity. And it's not just that people are going to use ChatGPT, they're going to use large language models in a variety of different ways.
They're saying its biggest problem is just where it takes its information from. It goes to the internet, and internet is full of crap, and so it might get it in the wrong direction. And do you see it also taking the spot of I don't know, copyright of writers, of marketing spiels? It's going to do everything by itself. You don't need all these guys anymore to write your company story. Or
AI will not replace doctors. Doctors who use AI will replace those who don't. AI will not replace journalists. Journalists who use AI will replace those who don't. Clearly, there will be many tasks will be automated away, and there will be some jobs that are completely automated. But we don't cry about the switchboard operators anymore. So there are disallocations, but this actually creates more opportunity. Think about that lawyer that's coming out who's using these tools, who is 5 times more effective than someone who's got 20 years more experience. That's the opportunity. Thinking of AI as a tool to increase our productivity is where we see the positive side of this.
What's the advantage of working with you guys versus just going to the public markets?
I'd say valuations for one thing, right? Like when you look at, like, there's just not that many ways to play AI right now. So you look at the big tech, you look at NVIDIA, you look at basically there's 2 public companies, Palantir and C3.ai. There's a few other ones, but when you look at these valuation multiples that are out there, I think it's pretty baked in. We think that there's actually an opportunity at the earlier stages where I appreciate this Gundren's questions around valuation. We still think, and especially right now with the tighter market in tech, we think we can actually take advantage and get in at a better valuation than what you're seeing in the public markets. You're always going to have the best risk return when there's a successful entity when you're early on. But we do think that we can really push that and get better valuations as well.
Let's see just a couple of the remarks here. Canada historically has more favorable valuations for investors versus Silicon Valley deals. What does that difference looks like today for the healthcare space and B2B enterprise software?
Yeah, and Gendron's really drilling down on the healthcare versus B2B. You know, again, we're looking at a variety. I'm not sure, to be honest, I'm not sure that I'm necessarily the best person to give exactly those numbers, but I'm happy to follow up with you, Gendron, in terms of how we think of those valuations. I don't see a massive difference in the healthcare space versus some of the other areas. I feel like that there's generous valuations you have to negotiate with entrepreneurs, regardless in the space in AI, regardless of healthcare or otherwhere. So I'd say clean tech and that is as bubbly as healthcare. But again, because we try to mitigate that by being first money in, it's a little bit different.
What kind of returns, somebody's asking here, you guys think you'll be able to come up with?
And happy to follow up with our data room in terms of some of the models that we've put out, and would like to talk about that in terms of a scenario analysis. You know, again, this is the first fund we have. I do think that it is a situation where although we're not, there's the opportunity right now because of the acquisitions in the space. We think we can actually get companies out the door and have some early exits very quickly that will completely juice up the returns of the fund. So if there's interest in exploring that further, I'd rather kind of provide that in the form of a scenario analysis versus giving you one set number. Again, given that this is the first fund, how we think of it is a modeling of various scenarios and the assumptions that we use. I'm happy to share that.
And some questions here are very specific, so I think you guys can reach out.
Exactly. Would love to talk. Exactly. I do see Sonic has this question here on you know,
NGO
space, exactly, partners looking at equality outcomes, sustainable investment, and the question is, how can we use AI in the investment to tackle gender inequality, cyberbullying, and identity theft? That's a big question. What I'll say, Sonic, is that there's a growing field within AI called responsible AI, RAI. And this is looking at everything from privacy, but also fairness and bias, which you're really getting at in terms of the inequality questions. So I don't necessarily think that AI can, say, solve identity theft. But what's critical is that an organization actually understands that if there's inequities or there's biases in data that are put into an AI model, that AI model will exacerbate and accentuate that bias. So it's critical that from all steps, from day one, even from how you're collecting the data and how you're building the model, that you take an RAI approach. We were one of the first startups to join the Responsible AI Institute, and have been heavily involved from a policymaker point of view, both in, you know, especially in Canada, in terms of the governance frameworks. We do believe there needs to be regulation here, and it needs to be done in a responsible way. We make sure, and part of, as we launch new businesses, that DNA is infused in all our businesses. So there has to be an RAI element to it. I think that even gets as far as one area that we won't play in. We actually don't play in terms of weapon systems. We'll not make investments there, and we don't make investments in subprime lending. We think that there are arguments to be made in both those cases. We'll just not take that on because we think that there's more purposeful use cases that we can work on, and we can still make as great returns being involved in some of these other areas.
And of course, there are all the ethical questions that obviously, I mean, we will not bring any new information here, but you know, when you're watching Star Wars and you see the actor or Indiana Jones at his younger version, that's cool. But when you see a deceased actor that's there just because the family approved, or I heard songs of deceased singers, which is, you know, and it sounds.
It's going to be absolutely fascinating, Danny. And so if you look, so Japan has actually said they're going to allow that any large language model be trained on Japanese data, and regardless of copyright law. So they're saying that they want to be the place where you build large language models. Meanwhile, Italy is saying, ChatGPT, we're shutting you down. So you're going to have, it gets extreme, the legal questions and the societal questions, it's going to take us years to unravel. If you're an artist and a generative AI application is trained based on your work, if it comes up with something new, is that copyright infringement? These are all unanswered questions from a legal point of view. And so I don't think that there's the answers of it yet. Again, what's key is I think there's a fairness point of view, and this is where responsible AI comes in. And this is, I think, the writer's strike, right? Like, you know, like some academics say, hey, radiologists aren't going to be around in years. It's going to be all AI. Well, who's going to put their butt on the line for the liability? When it's a cancer diagnosis, who's actually dealing with that? And so I know there's some questions in terms of like the issues in healthcare that we see. We've actually had, it's not a technical issue, it's actually a regulatory one. So for example, we've done some use cases around digital pathology and looking at various types of cancer. The AI right now, in many instances, is at human level or above for your run-of-the-mill diagnosis. In many instances, the clinician is still better for the very specific areas. But the clinician combined with the AI is way better than one without, and way better than the AI on its own. Again, we're building tools that allow people to be more productive. And so both from a regulatory point of view, and the fact that I don't think it's going to be Google or Amazon guaranteeing that cancer diagnosis, I could be wrong, we'll see. But you're still going to see professions exist. They're just going to change the way. And so this is something that actually improves humanity. This is why I say this is going to save humanity, not destroy it. There's just as many arguments for the positive as there are to the negative. But the media doesn't like to talk about positivity, Denny.
Tell me about it. So which industries excite you the most?
Yeah, and I sort of touched on it there. I mean, health is what I lost my father to cancer 3.5 years ago. The difference, biology, when you take biology and data and you combine it, it's going to completely transform, I believe, all aspects of healthcare. And so that area, I think, is one of the most exciting. But then the clean tech one is really, regardless of political opinions on climate change, the fact of the matter is like, that there needs to be, when we're talking about optimizing industrial processes, when you're talking about how to actually make better decisions in the energy space, it has to be involve data. And so the opportunity within a net zero and a sustainability point of view, our team members are lining up to work on both those type of projects. So we do a bunch in asset management. We've talked with the legal space. Hey, we pay our people well. They will do work in any area. But those two areas, I'm telling you, these 25 to 30-year-old masters and PhDs, these machine learning engineers, purpose matters. And that's part of our edge as well, because we can't necessarily keep up with the salaries from Silicon Valley. But if they're working on great teams on purposeful projects, that gives us an edge.
And we talked a little bit about Microsoft and ChatGPT, but do you think the market's going to end up with Google, Microsoft, Amazon's ruling the earth and the AI universe?
Well, we think that from the horizontal platform. So when I'm trying to say that, those data foundations underneath. So I would have thought that, say, Microsoft or Amazon would have been our biggest competition, or like, say, how do you just avoid getting stepped on by the giants? In reality, Microsoft is one of our most important partners. Because there's so much they've invested in these tool sets, you're going to see Azure with Databricks or Snowflake. So these are large database companies. Basically, there's the hyperscalers, Databricks and Snowflake. AI applications are going to be built on top of these stacks. And so when we go in and we're looking for an industry solution, we're actually talking to our friends at Microsoft and Amazon and Google and saying, what are you seeing in the market? Because it actually becomes the go-to-market for many of our verticals. If you can actually build on top of GCP or Azure or AWS, you solve that data problem and you actually have a natural distribution channel. So in the end, yes, you don't want to compete with them where they can build something that is a platform that goes to every industry that's agnostic, but that's where we see the vertical pillars that we still think is an opportunity.
One of the questions, if you see the opportunity, how big do you see the opportunity in AI? Is it bigger than is it the next blockchain? Actually, I would like to say that blockchain hasn't proved itself yet as the next big thing, right? Everybody talks about blockchain as if that's
the kind of in the crypto.
The next internet thing. It could be, but as of this second, it's not. AI though is obvious to be. I mean, it's already here. It's been here for the last several years, and that's taking over the world. I mean, it's not even in the same.
So sort of touched on this before, but I think this is as big. it feels exactly like the internet. Like, again, I'm a quote unquote old tech entrepreneur now, right? I'm 43 today, but when I was in my early 20s, it feels a whole lot like the .com boom. And I would say we're in the second or third inning right now. As much as it's new to many people at ChatGPT, this has been going on, and frankly, a lot of AI models have been going on for decades. What's changed now, though, is the hardware. So now we have the cost of collecting the data has dropped, and the cost for compute has dropped. Moore's law continues to hold. And so really that's what's giving AI its moment in the sun right now. And I don't think it's going to be like blockchain. I think you're right, Denny. I think it's going to be the closer parallel is more the internet itself.
So
there was a good question here on have we seen this RPA combined with AI from an anonymous attendee. Yes, completely. Actually, the hard part of building an AI solution isn't necessarily just the model. So you have these data science, you build the modeling piece of it, but that's almost always part of the other software, the user experience, all these other pieces in building that solution. And so the lines between RPA or robotic process automation or rules-based solutions, it's almost always a mix where you have some of that combined with many different types of AI models. And so yes, we see that all the time, and that's part of the reasons why you got to get your hand dirty with our edge and having that sister company that's building these AI labs. The great part is, from the funds perspective, we don't pay for any of that. But as part of this overall entity, we actually get the learnings and actually access the IP from doing all that work.
So we're getting close to the end of the hour. So my last question for you, and by the way, everybody, this is recorded. Hopefully, actually, with everything I had here today, hopefully it's recorded. I think it is. We will do this. So this will be recorded for all of you to check out later. Cory's information will be sent to all of you. And for those of you who couldn't attend, and you just don't hear me now because you're not attending, this will be recorded and we'll share that with you. I see there's another question, but just my last question for you would be, why you? Why are you the right person to run this fund? Why are you guys the best thing we should look at right now? One of the best options. Return profile, also if you can mention return profile, time frame, is it like any other VC? So that's basically how I would summarize my questions.
Yeah, you know what, I'm a builder, and so I think that because we're playing at the earliest stages here, we can add unique value with the studio model, where I think what's unique compared to other venture funds is that if you can tilt the odds of success at that earliest stage and filter out as many ideas as possible, the economics are completely changed. And many of the most successful venture studios are seeing far above market returns. As we're taking that tried and true approach where what's happening now over the evolution of the venture studios as an asset class and applying it to the top growth or the top technology trend that we see that will be around for the next decade. I will say that, I've got that. I've been investing off my own balance sheet for many years. I think we've kind of proven that we can actually launch businesses. And so as much as it's, a first-time fund per se, not new necessarily from an investment point of view, and have the track record. And I think really the team backing it to give a unique, to give a really unique play in this space.
So yeah, go ahead.
And I think Gudrun had, hey, Gudrun, I hope I hear from you because I know you have a lot of questions. But do we favor companies use ChatGPT to help develop their software code? So we're actually LLM agnostic. So we do work with Microsoft a bit. So we're using GPT, at least the large language model, not ChatGPT per se, because in the enterprise, you're going to want to have your own versions of that. But what's very fascinating right now is that, so Facebook, their model got released. Some say it was an accident, some say it was on purpose. So it's called Llama. So it's much smaller than GPT, but when because it's open source, you can fine tune it in a much different way than GPT. And when you're combining that with, knowledge graphs or with another source of truth, you're actually getting performance that's almost as good, in some cases better than GPT. So actually, when we work, we believe large language models are just part of the overall foundation. We're developing applications built around that business problem and the ability to swap in and out LLMs as makes sense. So it's a great question, but it actually part of our edge is not being tied to any one provider.
So yeah, it's been fascinating, and I had more questions, but obviously we don't get into now, but hopefully we'll do another session. If you guys want to see Cory, meet him in person, so at least he will be at our Calgary event coming up. With us, just a quick update, all hell is breaking loose after September 12. God have mercy on us. We got September 12 in Chicago, then we got in October, Calgary, Montreal, November, we're in LA. We're in London, we're in Tel Aviv, and then we got Miami as well. So yeah, all of that happening in 2.5 months. Amazing speakers from the Disney family coming to speak in New York, to Wrigley and Pritzker and Crown and others in Chicago, and Silverstein and Nazarian and Richard Sandler that runs Milken's Wealth, and many other huge names in LA. The son of Robin Williams will be coming to speak about mental health, and Spielberg are coming to speak in LA. Yeah, so it's just the Trump family from Florida, not the Trump that you might think of, in Miami. Calgary has amazing lineup, as well as Montreal, De Gaspé, Saputo, Desmarais, many people who most Canadians know. So all of that is happening, and hope to see you guys with us there. Cory, anything else you'd like to add at this point?
I would just give a +1. You know, the DC finance events are great, and so would highly recommend any of them. And hey, thank you for having me. And I want to just express gratitude for everybody for giving me the gift of your time for the last hour. And like I said, would absolutely love to hear from you, and we can have an extended version of this deck and then a full data room. So would love to continue the conversation if you think you might be a part of this journey.
Thank you, Cory, and thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you soon after the summer. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.